The moment he fired me, he raised his voice like volume could make it official. I heard the words before I felt anything. The command, sharp, clean, like he'd practiced it in front of a mirror. No warm-up, no warning, just the order. Dropped into the room and left there to rot. I stood when my chair scraped back. That dry squeal cut through everything else. It embarrassed him. I could tell. He wanted tears or excuses. Something loud enough to match his tone. I didn't give him that. My name is Marin Caldwell, 54 years old. I placed my badge on the table between us. Not slid. Placed. It landed flat. Plastic tapping wood. A sound small enough to make the room feel bigger. He watched it like it might bite. He waited. I could feel it. The pause where people usually plead, where they explain how long they've been here, and how hard they worked, how loyal they were. I've done that before in my life, and just not today. Good luck to you and your father. The smirk came fast. Too fast. Like relief. Like he thought that line settled something. He leaned back. Arms loose. Already bored. The kind of posture you take when you think you've won before the game starts. I nodded once and turned. Not because I was done. Because staying any longer would have made me reckless. And I didn't trust myself not to say something I couldn't take back. The hallway outside felt colder. The lights hummed. Someone down the hall laughed at a joke I didn't hear. I walked past my own reflection in the glass and barely recognized the woman moving forward without slowing down. Near the end of that walk, before the elevator doors closed, there's something you should know. The story you're about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. Names, events, and companies are dramatized for storytelling purposes. Any resemblance to real people or situations is coincidental. The door shut. The car dropped. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. I didn't check it. By the time I reached the lobby, I already knew one thing for sure. He thought he had finished something. He hadn't even started. By noon, he was already acting like the room belonged to him. My access was gone from 3 systems before lunch. I know because the alerts hit my phone one after another. Muscle memory still intact, even after the badge came off. Someone upstairs was moving fast. Sloppy fast. An email thread popped up. Same subject line. Different names. Mine missing like it had never been there. I went back for my laptop. HR sat stiff behind the desk, fingers pressed together. The machine was already boxed. When she slid it across, the fan inside made this thin clicking sound, like it was running on fumes. I'm just following instructions. Her eyes stayed on the cardboard. Not on me, not on the door. I nodded. Not because I agreed, because pushing her wouldn't change who gave the order. Accounting called 10 minutes later. Wrong number. Technically, old habit dies slow. Did you approve these 3 documents? All signed within an hour. All routed around the usual checks. No compliance stamp. No review window. Just confidence and ink. I scrolled while she talked, my thumb stopping on the timestamps. Too clean. Too fast. That's not how this usually I know. I cut in. Soft. Calm. Enough to make her stop mid-sentence. Down the hall. Raised voices leaked through a cracked door. Someone pushing for new reporting lines. Someone else hesitating, then giving in. You can hear authority being borrowed. It always sounds thin. I leaned against the counter and watched the updates roll in. Permissions reassigned. Budgets shifted. A chair claimed without being earned. I could have stepped in. I could have sent one email and frozen the whole thing. Instead, I closed my phone and let it keep happening. This is usually the part where people expect intervention. A warning, a correction. I didn't do either. I stayed still and let him keep writing his version of the day. By the time the afternoon meeting invites went out, he'd signed himself into a corner he didn't know existed, and everyone else had decided to follow him there. I texted his father, the CEO, on the actual one. I kept it short, clean, no emotion, just enough to flag that something had gone sideways. I waited, phone face up on the counter like it might answer me back. Nothing. Hours later, one message came through. Don't respond yet. I'll call. That was it. No context, no reassurance, No attempt to smooth anything over. Just a pause, delivered like a decision. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Long enough to feel the space where a real response should have been. He wasn't ignoring me. He was delaying me. There's a difference. Delay is intentional. Delay buys someone time. That's when it clicked that this wasn't only about me being walked out of a room, something else was being held back. Trimmed, reframed. The kind of information that sounds harmless once it reaches the top because all the sharp edges have been filed off. I paced the kitchen. Barefoot, the tile cold and unforgiving. I drafted a reply, deleted it, drafted another, shorter, deleted that too. I know myself well enough to know when I'm about to overcorrect. When I start explaining instead of stating facts, I put the phone down and forced my hands to stay still. An email came in from legal. Vague language, neutral tone, a request to stand by, no name attached, no signature at the bottom. That told me plenty. Another buzz, not a call. A calendar update, a meeting added without my name on it. I didn't push. I didn't escalate. I let the silence do its work. Quick aside, since you're here with me, silence like that isn't empty, it's crowded. Full of people deciding what version of the truth survives the trip upstairs. I sat at the table and waited, not for the call, for the moment when waiting stopped being a courtesy and started being leverage. When the phone stayed quiet, I picked it up and turned it face down. Accounting didn't call in a panic. That's how I knew it mattered. Her voice stayed low. Careful. We're seeing a timing issue. I asked her to forward the file. The document opened on my phone. Clean layout. Familiar language. The approval stamp sat above the review window. Not minutes early. Hours. Logged before anyone with authority could even touch it. That's unusual. She offered, like she was testing the word. It's impossible. I answered, and she went quiet. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. The proof was sitting there. Black text on white. He hadn't pushed the process. He'd stepped around it. There's a difference, and anyone who's been here long enough knows it. A second message followed. Another attachment. Different contract. Same problem. I set my coffee down and watched the steam thin out. Let it cool. Let myself cool with it. Someone from legal pinged the thread. Not with an objection. With a soft nudge. Let's revisit routing. That was the tell. When legal uses gentle words, it's because they're already worried. Down the hallway. Laughter burst out of a meeting room and cut off just as fast. The kind of laugh that comes from adrenaline. Someone enjoying the sound of their own momentum. I typed one line to accounting. Don't fix it. She hesitated. I could feel it through the delay. Leave it as is. I added, document everything. A pause, then a single reply. Understood. He wasn't just claiming authority anymore. He was rewriting the order of things, trusting that confidence could stand in for permission. And everyone around him was letting it happen because stopping it would mean choosing friction. Quick aside, this is usually where someone shrugs and says it'll be fine. They say it because saying anything else would mean doing something. I didn't do anything. Not yet. I locked my phone and let the approvals stack where he'd left them, each one quietly recording how fast he'd gone and how little he'd checked. By the time the next document came through, the pattern was already set. The email came from a name I recognized immediately. No greeting. No buffer. If Marin's gone, we pause everything. That was the whole message. I read it once. Then again. Let it sit. I didn't forward it. Didn't reply. There was nothing to clarify. They knew what they were saying, and so did I. The fallout started fast. Calendars filled. Meetings stacked on top of each other. People who hadn't spoken to each other in months suddenly needed alignment. I watched it happen through forwarded threads and half-finished drafts that still landed in my inbox out of habit. His number flashed on my phone mid-afternoon. I let it ring. A voicemail followed. His voice came in tight, clipped around the edges. We need to talk. No apology. No context. Just urgency. Dressed up like cooperation. Like this was a small miscommunication that could be smoothed out if we all just adjusted our tone. I listened once, deleted it, stared at the screen longer than necessary, felt the familiar tug to be reasonable, helpful. The version of myself that fixes things even when no one asked her to. That version didn't get a vote. Another call came in. I flipped the phone face down and slid it across the table until it stopped buzzing. The silence after felt heavy, like pressure dropping too fast. Quick aside, you can hear panic through a phone speaker. It's not loud, it's rushed. Words tripping over each other, trying to sound calm while chasing control. By the end of the day, people stopped pretending this was about performance. It was about leverage now. Contracts, deadlines, promises made out loud and written down. Someone forwarded the client's email to him. I know because 10 minutes later, my phone lit up again. No voicemail this time. Just missed calls, stacked like a tally. I didn't answer. I let the message do its work, let it move through the building without me carrying it, let him sit with the realization that my absence hadn't erased my influence. When the office lights dimmed and the noise thinned out, I closed my laptop and left the room the way I'd entered it. Quiet. Still in control. The memo landed before lunch. Company-wide, neutral font, cold subject line, unprofessional conduct, disruption, failure to align. My name sat there like a stain. Bolded once. Then repeated in softer language like that made it kinder. No examples. No dates. Just tone. Vibes. Enough to let people fill in the blanks themselves. My phone rang a minute later. A number I knew by heart. She didn't waste time. Don't respond. No greeting. No checking in. Not even to correct it. She added, like she could hear me inhaling. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. The hum from the vent was louder than it needed to be. My jaw hurt from clenching it. They want you emotional. She continued. They want you typing, forwarding, explaining. I said nothing. Anything you send becomes part of their story. She finished. That's how they trap you. I thanked her and hung up. Sat there with the phone in my hand like it might start talking again. Emails started coming in. Not from leadership, from coworkers. You okay? Heard something weird? This doesn't sound like you. I typed responses. Deleted them. Typed shorter ones. Deleted those too. Every sentence felt like a thread someone else could pull. Across the building, meetings kept happening without me. Doors closed. Decisions made. My absence repackaged as a liability. I wanted to walk back in and point at the memo. Wanted to say, read it again. Read it slowly. Tell me what I actually did. Instead, I shut my laptop and let the silence stretch. Quick aside. Since you're here with me, silence isn't strength. It's restraint. There's a difference, and it costs more than people think. By late afternoon, the tone shifted. Less confidence, more urgency. The kind that leaks when a plan starts wobbling. I stayed still and let them keep talking. Every word they added without me made the record cleaner. Logs don't care about confidence, or titles, or tone. They just record access records, timestamps, credential reuse, a clean list that didn't argue back when I scrolled. The server gave off a low hum, steady and annoyed, like it knew what it was watching and didn't approve. He logged in using someone else's name. Not once. Repeatedly. Same account, same window. A shortcut dressed up as efficiency. He adjusted numbers after the fact. Not enough to raise alarms, just enough to justify decisions already made. I copied the entries into a separate file and labeled them by date. No commentary, no interpretation. Facts stack better when you don't decorate them. A message popped up from IT. Casual, almost friendly. Everything okay on your end? I didn't answer right away. Let it sit, then typed a single line. Please preserve all access logs from the last 3 business days. The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again, understood. That was new. A shift. People get careful when they realize someone's paying attention. I pulled one more report. Network changes. Same pattern, same account. He treated shared credentials like a spare key left under the mat. Convenient until it isn't. Another notification slid in, this time from legal. Not a warning. A question. Do you have documentation to support your position? I sent the folder. No message attached. The hum didn't change. The system didn't react. It just kept recording. I didn't feel angry anymore. The heat burned off somewhere between the third log and the fourth. What replaced it was steadier, colder, the kind of calm that comes when the path forward stops branching. Quick aside, people think deleting files erases mistakes. It doesn't. It just adds another line to the record. By the time I closed the laptop, the case was already built. Not by me, by him. All I'd done was stop looking away. The invite came through marked urgent. Board level, no agenda. He arrived early, relaxed, jacket over one shoulder like this was a formality. He nodded at people the way you do when you think you own the outcome. I came in after him. Security didn't stop me. The assistant didn't hesitate. She just stepped aside and pointed to a chair already pulled out. His eyes flicked over, paused, came back. Why is she here? No one answered right away. Paper shuffled. Someone cleared their throat. The chair across from me scraped back a few inches, then stopped. The name placard in front of me caught his attention next. He leaned forward, squinting like the letters might rearrange themselves if he stared long enough. That's not right. The general counsel didn't look at him when she spoke. It is... Silence landed heavy. Someone at the far end kept tapping a pen against the table. Fast and uneven. It didn't stop. He straightened, smile thinning. This meeting is about her conduct. The chair beside him stayed empty. His father's seat. That absence did more work than any accusation. The counsel slid a folder across the table. Not toward me, toward him. Before we discuss conduct, she said, we need to address authority. He laughed once, short, sharp. Authority isn't the issue. It was the wrong line. Another folder followed. Then another. Dates, logs, approvals stacked in quiet agreement. I stayed still. Hands folded. Let the weight move without me touching it. He tried again. Louder. You can't bring her in like this. The chair at the head of the table finally filled. His father didn't sit. He stood behind it. Eyes on the documents. Not on his son. She didn't bring herself. He said, we did. I felt the shift then. Not dramatic. Just final. The kind you feel in your chest before anyone admits it out loud. Quick aside, you can watch confidence drain without a sound when the room stops backing it. No one asked me to speak. They didn't need to. The meeting moved on. Without him leading it, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The general counsel turned one page, then another. The paper made a soft, dry sound like it was tired of being handled. Before we proceed, she said, eyes still down. We need clarity on ownership. I slid the folder forward. Not fast, not slow. Just enough to cross the line in the middle of the table. The operating company is held by a trust. I said, that trust controls voting rights. He shifted in his chair. The leg scraped once, stopped. The trust has one beneficiary. The counsel continued, now looking at him, and one authorized decision maker. I nodded. That's me. Someone exhaled. Not a sigh. More like relief finding a way out. He leaned back, then forward again, as if distance might change the words. That's not possible. The counsel tapped the page where the figure sat. Clean and final. It is, I pointed to the line without touching it, 90%. The room went quiet in a way that felt physical, like sound had weight and someone set it down. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. You're saying I'm saying the math doesn't argue? I said, still calm. It concludes. His father finally sat, not heavily, deliberately. He didn't look at his son when he spoke. This explains the contracts. The counsel slid another document across, and the authority gap. He stared at the papers like they'd betrayed him, like confidence alone should have been enough to keep them loyal. No one threatened him. No one needed to. Quick aside numbers hit harder than insults. They don't flare up. They settle. The counsel folded her hands. We'll move to remedies. He swallowed hard. The sound carried. I stayed still. Let the room finish the sentence without me adding a word. By the time the counsel closed the folder, the outcome had already stopped moving. He wasn't fired. The counsel used a different word, careful and precise. Removed. She slid the papers across, not toward him, toward the center. Signatures he'd rushed sat there, clean and undeniable. Process did the rest. No speeches, No raised voices, just the sound of a pen set down when it was over. He tried to laugh it off at first. A thin sound. Then nothing. His shoulders dropped like he'd finally realized where the floor was. "This isn't personal," his father said. Eyes still on the documents. That hurt him more than anger would have. Security waited by the door. Not aggressive, just present. He stood, hesitated, looked at me like I might intervene. I didn't move. Authority was reassigned in 3 lines. Locked in, final, the kind of decision that doesn't echo, it just settles. Someone asked if I wanted the role. I shook my head. No. They waited, like I'd changed my mind. I don't want the chair. I added, I want the structure. That landed. I named an interim lead. Someone steady, someone boring. The council nodded. The board approved without discussion. Control stayed where it belonged. Quiet, durable. He left without a scene. No last words. The door closed behind him and stayed closed. I went home after, sat on the couch, let the day catch up to me. No rush of victory. No relief. Just a tired calm that felt earned and heavy at the same time. Quick aside, winning doesn't clean you up. It just leaves you with fewer things to carry. Before I slept, I wrote 1 line on a scrap of paper and left it on the counter. Power isn't proven by how loudly you take a seat. It's proven by how carefully you build the room so it never needs you to shout. She tapped the screen and told them to repeat the number. The room didn't shift. No warning. No soft landing. Just the number. Sitting there. Waiting to be said again like it was the punchline to a joke she'd already decided was funny. Someone near the table cleared their throat and said it. $300,000? She laughed. Not loud. Not cruel in an obvious way. More like amused. Like she'd caught a typo on a slide. Then she leaned back in her chair and added, calm as anything, that she could hire 4 people better than me for that amount? 17 partner executives were sitting behind me. Not even our people. The kind you don't embarrass your own team in front of unless you're trying to prove something. No one moved. No one said a word. I swear the only sound in the room was the projector humming, that low electrical buzz you stop noticing until everything else goes quiet. I didn't rush to explain myself, didn't joke it off, didn't try to justify the number. I just stood there, hands loose at my sides, staring at the same screen they were. That was the moment I understood this wasn't about compensation or budgets or alignment. This was about shrinking me until the room felt smaller with me in it. My name is Felicia Ward, 46 years old. I'd walked into that meeting thinking it was a routine check-in, a few slides, a few nods, then back to work. I didn't realize I was there to be used as an example. Not fired, not corrected, just quietly reduced, in front of people whose trust I'd spent years earning. Nobody defended me. Nobody even pretended to be uncomfortable. Chairs stayed still. Pens didn't stop moving. That told me more than the comment itself ever could. I remember thinking, not angrily, just plainly, that this was going to cost them something. Not because I planned anything, just because things like this always do. Near the end of the chapter, before the meeting officially wrapped, something else happened that mattered more than the insult itself. A partner I'd worked with for over a decade looked at me, then at her, then back down at the table. That tiny hesitation stuck with me. It told me the damage wasn't contained to me anymore. Before this story goes any further, one thing needs to be clear. The story you're about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. It is inspired by real workplace dynamics, power imbalances, and emotional truths. But the characters, companies, and events are dramatized for storytelling purposes. The meeting ended without ceremony, laptops closed, people stood, small talk tried to restart like nothing had cracked. I picked up my notebook and walked out with everyone else. Already knowing the next chapter wouldn't start in that room, the meeting ended like nothing had happened. Chairs scraped back, laptops snapped shut, someone cracked a joke about traffic. I stayed where I was for a beat too long, then moved with the group. No one slowed down to walk beside me. No one rushed either. That felt intentional. One of the partners caught my eye on the way out. He made a face that tried to be kind and landed somewhere closer to relieved. Not my problem. Not today. He turned his badge so it wouldn't clack against the table and followed the rest of them. In the hallway, my phone buzzed. A message from HR. Short. Careful. Just so you know, leadership approved this. Approved. Like a memo. Like a banner. Like something you put your name on when you don't want to own it later. I typed back 3 words, then erased them, left it on red. That felt like the right amount of response. I walked to my desk, swiped my badge. The green light flashed. Access granted. For a second, that annoyed me more than the meeting. If they were done with me, they could have been honest about it. Keeping the door open felt like a dare. Around me, people worked. Fingers on keyboards. Low voices. No one looked up. Not even the ones who usually did. I sat down and opened my inbox. Nothing urgent from leadership. Plenty from clients. I didn't answer any of them. The smell of burnt coffee drifted in from the elevators. Same smell every morning. Today it hit wrong. Sharp and sour, like it was stuck in my throat. I pushed my chair back and stood again. Sitting felt like agreeing. Someone from finance passed by and paused. Not long enough to say anything useful, just long enough to register the damage. He nodded once and kept walking. That was the moment it clicked. Nobody was confused. Nobody was shocked. This wasn't a misstep or a bad joke that got away from them. It had been lined up, rehearsed, timed. People didn't avoid my eyes because they felt bad. They avoided them because they knew exactly what had just been done. I grabbed my notebook, closed my email without saving drafts, and headed for the elevators. The badge worked again. Still green. Still welcoming. That didn't mean I belonged. It just meant they hadn't decided how much silence they needed from me yet. I opened my inbox and didn't even bother scrolling. 6 threads sat at the top. All marked urgent. Different companies. Same tone. Something had gone sideways. The phone lit up again. I let it ring this time. Then again. Then voicemail kicked in and I caught the first line as it recorded. Felicia. I know it's late, but late didn't mean anything in my world. Late just meant something was about to break. Nobody called the CEO when a shipment stalled or a deadline slipped. Nobody asked legal to calm a partner down. They called me, always me, because I picked up, because I didn't hide behind process, because I'd already been in the mess with them before. My phone kept vibrating against the desk, walking itself closer to the edge. I didn't grab it. I watched it instead, like it was proving a point for me. I thought about that night years ago when a partner's site went dark right before a delivery window. Midnight, snow coming down hard. I wasn't required to go. I wasn't even asked. I drove anyway. Sat in a folding chair under bad fluorescent lights while they figured it out. Ate chips from a vending machine. Slept in my coat for an hour. Stupid decision. Completely unnecessary. But when that partner renewed every contract the next year, nobody wrote that story down. They just saw the numbers and assumed they'd appear again on their own. Another voicemail came through. We don't know who else to call, a voice said, tight and controlled. Just tell us you're still there. I closed my inbox without answering. Not because I was playing games, because I needed to hear the silence for a second. Needed to understand what they'd actually been leaning on. This is the part people miss. Trust isn't built on strategy decks or quarterly wins. It's built on showing up when it's inconvenient and nobody's watching. On taking calls you don't get credit for. On decisions that look dumb on paper. You don't notice it while you're doing it. Only when someone tries to turn it into a line item. I picked up my phone then. Not to call anyone back, just to feel the weight of it in my hand. That constant buzzing hadn't stopped all morning. It didn't feel like pressure anymore. It felt like evidence. I reread my contract. Not fast, not skimming, line by line. Like it might change if I stared long enough. Non-solicit, non-compete, notice period. All the words people use when they want to sound fair while protecting themselves. Nothing in there said I had to stay quiet while someone tried to make me small. Nothing said I had to stay at all. My phone buzzed again. I flipped it face down. I needed 1 clean minute. I could stay, argue my case, walk into her office and list everything I'd held together over the years. I could explain what that number on the screen actually paid for. I could fight, or I could leave clean. I opened a new email. Wrote the resignation the long way first. Too many sentences. Too polite. It read like I was asking permission. I deleted it. Started again. After careful consideration. Deleted. Effective immediately. That was better. Honest. Cold. The kind of sentence that doesn't invite debate. I checked the time before I sent it. 4:17 in the afternoon. I remember because the second hand on the clock skipped instead of sweeping. That felt fitting. I copied HR, legal too. Not out of spite. Out of habit. The reply came fast. Not from her. From HR again. Can we discuss I didn't answer? I shut down my computer. Stood up. Grabbed my bag. Left the notebook on my desk on purpose. They could keep that. I didn't need proof of work anymore. The elevator dinged twice before the doors closed. It always does that. Today it sounded louder, like punctuation. I didn't look back when the doors opened in the lobby. Didn't slow down. Didn't stop to explain myself to anyone I passed. Leaving without a scene felt wrong. My body wanted something louder, something messier. I ignored it and kept walking. By the time I stepped outside, the decision already felt heavier than the anger. Not regret. Weight. The kind that doesn't lift once you commit to carrying it. My phone rang that night while I was standing in the kitchen. Staring at nothing. I almost didn't answer. Old habit kicked in before pride could stop it. The voice on the other end didn't waste time. Is it true? No greeting. No small talk. Just that? Yes, that was all I gave him. No context. No explanation. I didn't owe him one. And he didn't ask for it anyway. Silence stretched. Not dead air. The kind where you know other people are listening. Papers shifting, a chair moving, someone breathing too close to the speaker. So you're really gone? He said. Slower now. Careful. Like he was choosing words that couldn't be taken back. I didn't correct him. Didn't soften it. Let the quiet sit there and do its job. We had a call scheduled tomorrow. He added. With your team, not your company. Not your leadership, your team. That landed heavier than he probably meant it to. I won't be on it. Another pause. Longer this time, I could hear a second voice in the background. Low and urgent. He covered the phone for a second. Didn't hang up. When he came back, the tone had shifted. Less polite. More exposed. We'll talk Monday. Not a request. Not a threat. A decision already forming. Okay. The line went dead before I could say anything else. I stood there with the phone still pressed to my ear. Listening to nothing. My hand was shaking. Not fear. Adrenaline. The kind you get right before something irreversible finishes lining itself up. I poured a drink without meaning to. Ice hit the glass too hard. Cracked against the sides. I didn't remember pouring it. Didn't taste it either. Just listened to the ice clink as it settled. Slow and uneven. This is the part nobody prepares you for. The space between action and consequence, where nothing has happened yet, but everything already has. I didn't sleep much. Every time my eyes closed, I heard his voice again. Not angry, not accusing, just recalculating. By the time morning came, I knew something had started moving. Not because I wanted it to, because once trust shifts, it doesn't wait for permission. By 10 in the morning, 9 contracts were gone. I didn't hear it from leadership. I heard it from the people who still thought I was inside the building. Emails forwarded with a quick sorry attached. Screenshots cropped tight so names didn't show. Subject lines did all the talking. Termination, effective immediately. Transition notice. Someone wrote, "Did you see this like I could fix it?" Inside the company, everything tilted at once. A calendar invite slid across my screen from an old teammate. Emergency call. War room. Mandatory. The invite disappeared a minute later, replaced by another one, then another. They were moving fast now. Too fast. My phone lit up. The first call I let ring, the second one too. The third left a message that tried to sound calm and failed. "We're just trying to understand what's happening." The voice said, "If you know anything, now would be a good time." I knew exactly what was happening. I also knew I hadn't done anything wrong. Another message came in from finance. Not a greeting. A file. A list of accounts highlighted in red. 9 names, all familiar, All mine. Once. Slack notifications started popping up on my phone, even though I'd logged out. Someone must have pulled an old screenshot. My avatar was still there, frozen mid-smile, next to a thread titled Client Risk Assessment. I stared at it longer than I should have. The calls kept coming. Different numbers, different tones. One tried urgency, one tried friendliness, one tried authority and landed on panic instead. We need you to pick up. A text read, "This is getting serious." I didn't reply. This is the thing about confidence. It holds as long as numbers behave. The second they don't, it evaporates. All that certainty from last week vanished the moment the losses became measurable. I set my phone face down on the table and walked away from it. Not out of spite, out of necessity. Whatever they were scrambling to build now, it wasn't mine to hold together anymore. It didn't stop after Monday. It just slowed down enough to feel deliberate. A contract here. Another one 2 days later. Then 2 more before the week ended. No announcements. No coordinated exit. Just quiet withdrawals. Like people slipping out of a room once they realize the conversation isn't worth staying for. By the end of 16 days, 51% of the company's revenue was gone. That number came to me through a spreadsheet I wasn't supposed to have. A former analyst sent it with no message attached, just the file. The red cells did all the talking. Legal reached out the same afternoon. Certified letter. Very official. Very careful. The language accused me of influencing clients indirectly. A softer way of saying sabotage without having to prove it. My lawyer read it once. Then again, slower the second time. He didn't look up when he spoke. You didn't contact anyone. No, not one call, not one email, nothing. He nodded and typed a single sentence. That was the response. No emotion. No defense strategy. Just the truth, stripped of decoration. The printer hummed while the letter came out. Louder than it needed to be. I stood there and watched it feed through, page by page, like the machine was stalling on purpose. They were blaming me because they needed someone solid to push against. Something heavier than market conditions or bad leadership. Gravity is uncomfortable to accept. Easier to point at the person who stepped away and pretend they pulled the building down with them. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel guilty either. Mostly I felt tired. The kind of tired that comes from watching something collapse in slow motion when you already know the ending. Messages kept coming in from people still inside. Updates. Panic wrapped in professionalism. I didn't respond to any of them. Once you let go. You can't pretend you're still holding the weight just because everyone else is scrambling underneath it. She called late in the afternoon. Not through an assistant. Not through legal. Her number showed up plain on the screen, like we were still on casual terms. I answered. There was no laugh this time. No opening line meant to soften anything. Just breathing. Shallow. A little uneven. "We should talk," she said. Not commanding, not friendly. Careful. I waited. Let the silence stretch until it stopped feeling polite. "We can revisit compensation." She added. The words came out rehearsed, like she'd practiced them in front of a mirror that didn't talk back. There's room to adjust. Still no apology. Not even a placeholder version. No acknowledgement of the meeting. No mention of the screen. Just money. Pushed forward like it could patch over everything underneath. I pictured her office without trying to. The desk. The phone pressed too close to her face. The confidence that used to sit comfortably in her voice now replaced by something thinner. "You moved fast," she said, almost accusing. "Clients are reacting." I didn't argue that. I didn't confirm it either. "What do you want?" I asked. Another pause. This one longer. I could hear papers shifting. Someone else was in the room with her. I recognized that sound. Backup. "We need stability," she said finally. "Right now." There it was. Not me. Not trust. Stability. The bleeding had started showing through the bandages. "I'm not coming back," I said. Calm. No edge, just the fact. Her breath caught, just slightly, like she'd expected resistance. Negotiation. Something she could lean against. "You don't have to decide today," she said. Quickly. Too quickly. "We can structure this." I let that sit there. Didn't fill the space. Didn't help her out. She hadn't called to make things right. She'd called because the numbers had stopped behaving and she needed someone familiar to put them back in line. When the call ended, she didn't say goodbye. Neither did I. I set the phone down and noticed my hand wasn't shaking anymore. Whatever power she thought that offer carried had already expired. I didn't hear it from her. I heard it from someone 2 layers down, a person who used to schedule meetings and now forwarded things with shaky hands. No subject line, just a sentence dropped into the body of an email. She's out. Board decision, no explanation, no announcement. Quiet. The way they handle anything they don't want, traced back to intent. After that, the company got smaller in pieces. A department folded, then another. Clients didn't come back. They didn't need to make a point. The place lost its shape first, then its confidence. A few months later, it sold for a fraction of what it had been worth. Different logo, same walls, new people pretending nothing happened there. Nobody said my name in public. Nobody blamed me. Nobody defended her either. The story moved through the industry without attaching itself to any one person. That's how these things survive. Vague enough to repeat, clean enough to forget. One last message came through a few weeks later. Not from leadership, from someone in operations I used to trust. We're trying to transition accounts smoothly. Any guidance would help. I read it once. Left it there. Didn't reply, didn't delete it either. Just let it sit. The unread badge stayed on my phone longer than it should have. Weeks. Every time I saw it, I felt the pull to be useful again. To fix something, to make myself necessary. Old reflex. I ignored it. Silence did more work than any explanation I could have offered. It didn't argue. It didn't negotiate. It didn't soften itself to make anyone comfortable. I wasn't punishing anyone by staying quiet. I was protecting the part of myself that used to rush in when things broke. Even after being told I was replaceable, by the time the message disappeared under newer ones, the company was already gone in every way that mattered. And I was done proving that absence can speak louder than defense. Sometimes the meeting comes back to me without warning. Not the whole thing. Just the screen. The number sitting there. The way she said it like it was settled, like the math had already decided who I was, she'd sounded sure. That's what sticks. Not loud, not angry. Certain. I didn't win because I proved her wrong. I didn't win because clients left or because the board made a quiet decision later. None of that felt like winning when it happened. I won because I left, and I didn't undo it. There were days I almost did. Days when my phone buzzed with another update, another collapse, another person asking if I could step in just to stabilize things. The words were always the same. Temporary, advisory, clean exit. They never said the part where I'd have to swallow myself again. Once, I typed out a reply. 3 sentences. Professional. Helpful. I stared at it long enough for the screen to dim, then deleted the whole thing. My hands didn't shake when I did it. That surprised me. The office I work in now is quiet. Not impressive. Not buzzing. Just quiet. The kind where nobody's waiting for me to fix something they refuse to protect. I sit down, do my work, leave when the day ends. No emergencies built on disrespect. I think about what would have happened if I'd gone back. If I'd let the number be redefined, let the room decide my worth, let the apology be replaced by an offer. I don't feel angry anymore when I think about it. Just clear. Here's the lesson I took with me. The only one that stuck. If someone shows you they can reduce you to a line item in public, believe them the first time. Don't stay to negotiate your dignity. Leaving doesn't make you weak. Staying after that makes you disappear. I didn't go back. That choice stayed mine, and nothing they offered afterward could buy it back. Have you ever been treated like furniture before 8 in the morning? The keys hit the ground before I fully registered what was happening. A sharp plastic crack. Small sound, but loud enough to freeze everything for half a second. I didn't see his face first. I saw the motion. A flick of the wrist. Casual. Dismissive. Like muscle memory. Like he'd done this 1,000 times and no one had ever let the keys fall. Park it straight. His fingers snapped once in the air, already turning away. Already done with me. I stood there with my coffee going cold in my hand. Didn't bend down. Didn't explain. Didn't correct him. The keys sat between my boots. catching the light like they were waiting for instructions. My name is Mara Ellison, 62 years old. A tow truck rolled in from the service lane, right on cue, like it had somewhere better to be. Diesel hung in the air. Chains clinked. The driver leaned out of the window, squinting past the scene. Eyes landing on me. Boss! Which one today? I pointed at the Maybach. Didn't raise my voice. Didn't smile. Just lifted my hand and let it hang there long enough for the driver to follow it. That's when the yelling started. Big words. Legal ones. Lawsuits. Jobs. Careers. He paced. He gestured. He looked around, waiting for someone to back him up. No one moved. I remember thinking this was either going to end fast or ruin someone's year. Maybe both. There's a strange calm that shows up right before things break. I've felt it before. It's not confidence. It's not anger. It's more like your body deciding before your brain catches up. If you've ever felt a moment lock into place like that, you know what I mean. Like the rest of the day has already been written and you're just waiting to read it. The story you are about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. Names, characters, companies, and events have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. Any resemblance to actual people or situations is purely coincidental. By the time the chains tightened and the car shifted, he was still shouting, still sure he was right, still sure this was a misunderstanding he could talk his way out of. I watched the Maybach lift, slow and heavy, and felt something settle in my chest. I didn't tow the car because I was mad. I towed it because he'd already crossed a line he didn't know existed. What if the car wasn't the point at all? My phone started buzzing before the tow truck cleared the gate. I let it buzz once, twice, third time. I picked up. A woman's voice rushed through the speaker. Tight and thin. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't need to. Panic has a sound. He's calling the police. I leaned back against the counter in my office and watched the security feed rewind. The Maybach lifting, the chains tightening, his arms cutting the air like he could slice his way out of it. Okay. A pause. She clearly hadn't expected that. He says the car was stolen. He says this is illegal. I took a breath. Slow. Not for her. For me. Tell him to read the lease. Another pause. Longer this time. Papers shuffling on her end. A keyboard clicking, then stopping. He says he doesn't have time for that. I closed my eyes for a second. Just a second. That old flicker showed up. The one that whispers, maybe this is too much. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe this is stupid. Over a car. Then tell him he's about to find the time. The call ended without a goodbye. Honestly, my hand was shaking a little when I set the phone down. I didn't like that. I don't pretend to be fearless. I just hate being rushed into backing down. I opened my laptop. The screen lit my face in that harsh way it always does when you're alone with your thoughts. New document. Project Maybach. I stared at the words. They looked ridiculous. Dramatic. Like I was picking a fight I didn't fully understand yet. But the thing that stuck wasn't the car. It was how natural it had been for him. The snap. The assumption. Like the ground tilted toward him wherever he stepped. I minimized the document instead of deleting it. Sometimes you don't start things because you're ready. You start them because stopping feels worse. When the phone buzzed again, I didn't answer right away. I already knew this wasn't ending with a returned car and an apology. I sat there, listening to the hum of the building, and felt the shape of what I'd just set in motion. Why do people lower their voices around bullies? He was already loud when I walked in. Not raised voice loud, sharp loud. The kind that cuts. The barista's hands were shaking so hard the metal spoon kept tapping the counter. Tap, tap, tap. That sound crawled under my skin. Oat milk. That was the crime. He leaned in close. Too close. Eyes bright like this was entertainment. The girl tried again. Different carton. Same hands. Same tapping. Someone behind me muttered, barely moving their lips. He's a lot. Another voice. Even quieter. HR has a file, but he makes money. I stood there longer than I needed to. Longer than was smart. I hate that about myself. I watch things play out even when I already know how they end. He finally took the cup, sniffed it, shoved it back. The spoon clattered to the floor this time. No one bent to pick it up. Not her, not him. He turned and walked straight toward me. Didn't slow down. Didn't adjust his path, like I was furniture he expected to move. Maintenance? He tossed over his shoulder. Already past me. Didn't look at my face. Again, I felt that familiar heat rise. Not anger exactly. More like recognition. I'd seen this my whole life. Different men. Same posture. Same confidence that silence meant agreement. The barista whispered something to the next customer, an apology that wasn't hers to make. I caught her eye and nodded once. It wasn't much. It felt small, but it was all I could offer without tipping my hand. People shuffled forward. Voices stayed low. No one laughed. No one challenged him. The room kept functioning like nothing had happened. If you've ever swallowed your words to keep a job, you know that feeling. The way quiet feels safer than right. The way it sits heavy afterward. He walked out with his cup untouched, leaving that spoon on the floor. I watched someone finally pick it up. That was when it clicked for me. Silence doesn't stay contained. It spreads. It seeps into places it shouldn't reach. And sooner or later, it starts breaking things that cost real money. What would you do if someone tore into what you paid for? The sound hit before I saw anything. Jackhammers at 7 in the morning? That vibration travels straight up through your boots and settles in your teeth. I knew something was wrong before I rounded the corner. They were cutting into the guest lot. Not the tenant side. Not a marked work zone. The guest lot. Fresh asphalt split open like it was nothing. Roots yanked out and tossed aside. Thick cables sitting way too close to the surface. Close enough to make my stomach tighten. I walked straight toward the noise and lifted my hand. The foreman hesitated. The machines didn't. I waved again. Harder. He finally cut the power. The sudden quiet felt heavier than the noise. He came over with a clipboard tucked under his arm. Didn't introduce himself. Didn't ask who I was. Who approved this? My voice came out flatter than I expected. A laugh drifted over from behind him. I didn't have to turn to know who it was. Relax, he said, already smiling. We're upgrading. I stepped closer so he could see the open trench. The torn roots. The cable housing scraped raw. This stops now. He glanced at the damage like it was a scuffed shoe. Then he looked at me. Really looked this time. The smile widened. We control this now. Something in my chest dropped. Cold. Not anger. Worse than that. The kind of calm that shows up when you realize the line has already been crossed. I pulled my phone out and started taking pictures. Slow, careful. Every angle. The foreman shifted his weight. Someone restarted a machine, then shut it off again. You should probably move, he added. This is an active site. I didn't answer. Just finished documenting and slipped the phone back into my pocket. I walked away without raising my voice. Without calling security. Without correcting him. Ever notice how people get careless when they think you're powerless behind me? The jackhammers roared back to life. The ground shook. I kept walking. By the time I reached my office, my hands were steady. My phone buzzed with a new message from compliance. Still unread. I opened my laptop instead and pulled up the lease. Some admissions don't sound dangerous when they're said out loud. They don't have to. The damage was already there. Cut clean into the ground. What happens when someone who ignores rules meets paperwork? I brought in compliance the same way I do most things. Quietly, no announcement. No warning email, just a calendar block that didn't explain itself. The inspector showed up with a clipboard and a bad attitude. Middle-aged. Permanent frown. The kind of person who doesn't care who signs the checks. She walked the floor without looking at anyone. Measured, counted, wrote, paused at the exits and frowned harder. This is blocked, she muttered, tapping her pen against a pallet stacked too close to the door. She didn't wait for permission before moving it. We followed the wiring next. She crouched, checked the panel, stood up slower than she'd gone down. Power draw doesn't match what's on file. I didn't react. Just nodded and wrote it down myself. The list was already longer than I liked. Emergency exits, electrical load, unauthorized modifications, noise complaints logged and ignored. Too much. Enough that it stopped being about a single person and started being about risk. She flipped a page. Who signed off on this? No one, I said. That got her attention. I drafted the default notice that afternoon. Clean language, clear violations. The kind of document that ends conversations. I stared at it for a long time. Didn't send it. Not yet. This is where most people rush. They want the relief. The final move. The email that proves they were right all along. I sat there instead. Fingers hovering over the keyboard. Feeling that tight pull in my chest. Waiting feels passive. It isn't. Waiting is pressure applied slowly. I closed the draft and minimized it. A new message popped up from his assistant. No subject line. Just a single sentence. He wants to know when he's getting his car back. I didn't answer. I added another line to the list. Time and date. Documented. When you start writing things down, you stop arguing. You stop explaining. You let the paper do the talking later. I saved the file and shut the laptop. Some leverage only works if you don't use it right away. What if the worst thing wasn't what he did, but what he said? I wasn't trying to listen. I was wiping down the counter near the service corridor, half thinking about the list on my laptop, half thinking about nothing at all. His voice carried. It always did. Loud, confident, like walls were optional. He laughed first. That sharp, pleased sound. Then the words landed. They think we own the parking structure? I stopped moving. The rag stayed bunched in my hand. I didn't turn, didn't breathe right away. Yeah, he went on. Pacing. Shoes scuffing. By the time they find out, I'll be gone. Another laugh. Someone on the other end must have said something funny, or reassuring, or stupid. I stayed where I was, staring at the same spot on the counter like it might change if I looked away. That wasn't arrogance. I'd dealt with arrogance. This was different. This was someone betting with other people's money, other people's reputations, my property. His footsteps moved off. The hallway emptied. The building settled back into its usual hum like nothing had happened. I wrung the rag out in the sink until my hands hurt. The water ran clear. My thoughts didn't. When I got back to my office, I closed the door and picked up the phone. Didn't scroll, didn't hesitate. Just dialed. My lawyer answered on the second ring. Familiar voice. Calm. Always calm. I need you to prepare something, I told him. A default notice. And an analysis. He asked what changed. He's claiming assets that aren't his. I said, to people who matter. Silence on the line. The good kind, the listening kind. I'll need proof. He said finally. I know. Do you want me to send it? Not yet. Another pause. Shorter this time. All right, he said. Tell me when. I hung up and sat there longer than I should have, letting the shape of it settle. This wasn't just about a car or a trench or blocked exits anymore. This was about timing. People who lie that big usually can't help themselves. They repeat it. What would you do if someone handed you proof? They came in groups of 3 and 4. Dark suits, soft smiles, the kind of confidence that comes from flying business class and not paying for it yourself. Someone had set up a sign near the entrance. Someone else was filming. He took the lead like this place had always been his. Big gestures, wide arms, a practiced laugh that carried just far enough to pull attention back when it drifted. I stayed to the side, close enough to hear, far enough to be ignored. They reached the front lot, the same stretch of pavement, the same space where the Maybach had been. He didn't hesitate, didn't check himself. Our property, he said, sweeping his hand across the lot. We control access here. That's part of the value. A few heads nodded. Someone murmured approval. A phone tilted for a better angle. I felt it then. That strange, steady calm. The kind that only shows up once you know you're not the one exposed anymore. He turned, finally noticing me. The look passed over his face fast. Annoyance, recognition, dismissal. He snapped his fingers. Can you move those leaves? The words were sharp, performative. We're trying to make a good impression here. No one laughed. No one stopped him either. I nodded once, small, polite, exactly what he expected. Then I walked away. You don't stop someone when they're building your case for you. You let them finish. You let them be clear. You let witnesses hear it in their own ears. Behind me, he kept talking. Expansion plans, control, long-term vision. He said too much. He always did. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The cameras were still rolling. The investors were still listening. And the words he'd chosen weren't going anywhere. By the time I reached my office, my phone was already buzzing. Not from him. From my lawyer. Just one line. I heard, "We're ready." I closed the door and sat down. The building felt heavier, quieter, like it was holding its breath. Some people think the moment you win is loud. It isn't. It's the moment you stop needing to explain anything at all. What happens when the wrong man talks in the right room? The meeting was called fast. Too fast for spin. I pulled the suit from the back of the closet. It still fit. Barely. I didn't bother with jewelry. Just the suit and a folder thick enough to feel heavy in my hands. He was already talking when I walked in. Big voice. Fast cadence. Words stacked on top of each other like he could outrun the truth if he kept moving. He noticed me halfway through a sentence. The shift crossed his face before he could stop it. Confusion first, then irritation, then something smaller. That part mattered. It told me he finally understood where he was. I took the seat across from him and set the folder on the table. Didn't open it. Didn't look at anyone. Let the room settle around us, and he kept going. Growth. Control. Long-term value. He used the same phrases I'd heard him practice in the hallways. I slid the first page across the table. The lease, flagged, tabbed, annotated. Then the photos. Trenches, blocked exits, exposed wiring. Then the logs, dates, times, complaints. Measured load, documented risk. He stopped talking. The silence stretched. Chairs shifted. Someone cleared their throat. No one reached for the papers right away. That hesitation told me everything. He exploded then. Accusations. Pointing. A hand slapping the table hard enough to rattle the water glasses. He leaned toward me, voice rising, trying to pull the room back into his orbit. No one met his eyes. One of the executives leaned back. Arms crossed. Another flipped a page without looking up. The chair at the head of the table tapped a pen once. Sharp. Final. Security appeared at the door like they'd been standing there the whole time. Maybe they had. He tried again. Louder. Desperate now. Words tumbling over each other. Ownership. Authority. Rights. The pen tapped again. Please stand. Someone said, calm. Bored. There's a sound a room makes when power shifts. It's subtle. Like air moving out of a space you didn't know was sealed. He stood. Slowly. The folder stayed where it was. I didn't move. Didn't need to. As he was guided toward the door, his eyes found mine. Not angry anymore, not confused. Just late. How do you dismantle a lie? It didn't happen all at once. That's the part people miss. There was no announcement. No dramatic pause. Just a series of small, unavoidable consequences lining up. The fleet was still parked along the red curb. Fire lane. Same spots they'd been using for months like the rules were decorative. Someone had finally put up temporary notices. Someone else had ignored them. Tow trucks rolled in mid-morning. Different drivers this time. No small talk. No curiosity. Just clipboards and hand signals. One of them glanced at me. All of these I nodded. Chains dropped. Hooks locked. Tires lifted an inch. Then another. The sound was duller than the Maybach. Less dramatic. More final. He came out carrying a cardboard box. Standard size. The kind companies keep stacked in storage rooms for days like this. A plant? A framed photo? Something that looked like a stress ball. He stopped when he saw the trucks. No, he said, too fast, too loud. Those are company vehicles. No one answered him. One of the drivers checked a list and kept working. Another adjusted a strap and signaled for the truck to pull forward. He turned toward me then. Not angry. Not shouting. His voice dropped like he was trying a different approach. You can't do this. I didn't respond. There wasn't anything left to say that would help him. Or me. Security stood nearby. Close enough. Not touching him. Just there. The first truck pulled out. Then the second. The space they left behind looked wrong for a second. Too empty. Like furniture moved out of a room you're not ready to admit is done. He stood there with the box pressed against his chest. No phone. No keys. No one coming to stand next to him. Losing quietly hurts worse. I know that. The last truck turned the corner and disappeared. The curb was clear again. The lane open. I walked past him without slowing. The box scraped against his jacket as he shifted his grip. By the time I reached the door, the lie had nowhere left to park. Do small moments really matter? The fees cleared by noon, repairs scheduled. The lot looked normal again, which bothered me more than the damage ever did. Normal can lie, normal can pretend nothing happened. I stood in my spot, same faded letters, same silence. The ground didn't remember the chains or the shouting. It never does. Security walked past and gave a nod. Not friendly, not afraid, just acknowledgement. That was new. I returned it and kept my eyes forward. Later, his assistant came by. She didn't step inside. Held herself at the threshold like it might close on her. He wants to know if there's anything he can do. She said, her voice was steadier now. I shook my head once. Small movement. Enough. She swallowed. He didn't think I know. I said, already turning back to my desk. She left without arguing. That mattered too. I sat there longer than I needed to. Thought about stopping it earlier. Thought about saying something before the first chain tightened. Thought about whether this made me better or just finished a chapter I'd been avoiding. It didn't start with revenge. It started with keys hitting concrete, with a snap of fingers, with a belief that the ground would always tilt his way. I closed the file. Project Maybach. The name felt childish now. I deleted it. When I locked up, the place was quiet. Honest quiet. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. Here's the lesson. Since you asked for one, even if I said I didn't have it, power isn't loud. It isn't the snap of fingers or the size of the car. Power is knowing where the lines are and enforcing them once, cleanly, without apology. And respect isn't something you demand. It's something you show in small moments, especially when you think no one important is watching. I turned the lights off and walked out. Some people lose everything because they couldn't bend down and pick up their own keys.